Welcome to Tech Talk with R&E Automated. I'm your host, Jordan Dieterle. Join us as we dive into the world of automation and manufacturing, bringing you expert insights from industrial professionals and business leaders. Whether you're a business owner, engineer, or simply passionate about technology, this podcast is your go-to source for the latest trends and innovations in the field. Welcome, everybody, to Tech Talk with R&E. I'm your host, Jordan Dieterle. Today here I have Mike Nascarella from, it is Thermal Energy Engineering Company, TEECO for short. Welcome, Mike.
Yes, thanks for having me on.
So I wanted to learn more about TEECO and see what you guys do in the field, in the automation, manufacturing space. Can you kind of give me some detail on what you guys do in the manufacturing space?
Yeah, so generally speaking, we are niche subject matter experts in gas-fired manufacturing equipment. So pretty much anything that's a heated process where we've got customers where we're melting steel and aluminum, we're drying sand in the mining industry, or we're drying textiles or anything like that. All of it is using heated equipment of some kind. Most of the time, gas-fired. Gas happens to be cheap and, believe it or not, energy and carbon efficient. So therefore, it's kind of the energy method of choice for the industry in the U.S. So we became subject matter experts in the hardware of the equipment, and then that kind of propagated out toward us being a lot more familiar with the process. So a lot of the support we do for our customers is not only on the hardware, on the technical side, but really kind of understanding throughput of the equipment, throughput of the material and the product, and quality of the product, and how our equipment has an effect on it.
Oh, okay. So we say you're basically like natural gas burners, right? Or any fuel source for a burner, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can, if it burns, we should know about it. Most of the time, 99% of the time, it's natural gas. It's abundant, it's cheap, and pretty much every plant has provisions for it. Some places, depending on location, will get curtailed in the winters or whatever, gas prices spike. So they will go to oil, or sometimes they're burning diesel, sometimes they're burning propane. And so we kind of help handhold companies through that when that becomes necessary.
Okay. Have you seen the gas burner industry evolve over the last 5 to 10 years? I know you've been I guess maybe we should backtrack and say how did you get involved into this, and how did you end up owning TEECO?
So years ago, myself and a couple of the guys that work with me were working for a company in the sales channel for one of the major burner companies that basically kind of absorbed 80% of the industry. So we got familiar enough with their equipment, and eventually kind of got to the point where we found more value in being a service provider rather than a hardware provider. We still do provide the hardware. We can spec equipment, we can build things, custom controls and gas trains and things like that, just to make sure that everything is safe and up to code. But we find that the value that we have is more on the service side, where we do the safety inspections and troubleshooting and things like that. That's where we have the biggest impact. So we got into this just kind of realizing we can make a whole company out of this, where we're just doing, we don't have obligations to sell hardware, because that's not what the customer is asking us for. Our value add is going into the field and actually putting what we know to use.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so you did that for, I guess, give me an estimate to say 5-6 years.
Yeah, it was about 6 years working in the channel, and then we've been doing this for almost 2 years now.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. So fairly new company, but it's growing. Is the way it sounds.
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah. I know you're always busy, always on the road. So what has evolved with the burner industry? Has it kind of stayed the same and say that whole time you've been in it, or is there like new things coming out quite a bit, or?
When I had first, the theory of combustion is kind of known. There's no new mousetrap for a burner,
Mhm.
generally speaking. Um, Burning natural gas is as old as the industry itself. So, burners that existed 50, 100 years ago, the same models, the same theories apply today. There's really not change there. What's really changing now is companies' appetite for energy. Um, just generally, speaking of energy, we're seeing power plants getting built, which are using gas-fired turbines. Um,
Wow. Okay.
Without those, there's no electricity or anything like that. So it kind of shows the importance of what we do, even though it's sort of behind the scenes. But again, the appetite for energy is changing to the point where companies have carbon initiatives. They want to reduce emissions. A bit of it is, some of it is important, but some really needs to be thought about in a kind of an intelligent way. And what we're seeing now is providing advice on things like hydrogen initiatives. People want to burn hydrogen.
Hmm.
Burners exist to burn hydrogen and or can be retrofitted for it. But is it the right choice? What are your energy demands of your particular manufacturing site? Is it, safe to do so? Can you store hydrogen? Things like that. So we're seeing that we get asked about this a lot, and most of what we do, we'll support them if that's what they really want. But most of
Hmm.
what it turns out to be, most of what we do is kind of talking them out of what they thought were good ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. You're kind of like, so I guess overall you're just being a consultant, but then you're like, is say telling them, hey, this is the safe way to do it. Is say, but it might not be the newest way. It's more like this is how it's kind of generally been done, and you say you're kind of modifying their input and then giving them your expertise. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a little bit funny because a lot of how we kind of see ourselves is interrupting the "we've always done it this way" type
Mm.
of attitude, and we do that a lot. But sometimes the old way is the right way. I mean, the same burner that they've been manufacturing for 30, 50 years just happens to be a great burner, and I would install it today just as I would have 50 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, you're probably still finding challenges to say like installing new systems to say now because of the technology advancement. Is that pretty
Yeah.
common? I mean, you just said they say the hydrogen, they say power, they say burner, say would that be say is it's kind of like newer technology, say where it's like, or is it's always been there too?
Most hydrogen is really officially, according to us in the burner industry, not a new technology.
Okay.
The technology has existed for probably 20 or so years. Only no one was really selling them because they weren't selling. Natural gas was so cheap and there was no reason not to use it.
Mm.
So most burners that exist today are what we would say hydrogen ready, where they can be retrofitted to certain, whatever specs. There are other things to do with hydrogen that make it, maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not. Some of it being the fuel delivery and the safety of that, and most of the codes that dictate what you are and are not supposed to do are still centered around coal, wood,
Hmm.
and gas and oil fired equipment, and hydrogen is sort of different, and code hasn't really caught up for it yet.
Okay, that's interesting. You said, yeah. I mean, so my personal experience is say I've worked on a few ovens in my career, so and it was always a challenge. So I mean, I'm looking at it as like, man, I say like this is tough, and I I experienced to say a lot of like challenges from the customer standpoint. How do you guys manage that? I mean, obviously you're an expert in it, but I mean, the customer just wants, when you get to their site, they're down and they want you running instantly.
Yeah,
They say, or they want you to design this complex system that it's like, oh yeah, I say this is kind of feasible, but let me reconvene. Let me look at the drawings again, or relook at this to say, how are you dealing with those challenges? I mean, I know it's usually high pressure when a burner goes down. So
So there's a mixed emotion when we arrive on site, because usually there's a semi sense of relief that, okay, finally the burner guy is here,
yeah,
and then there's also, hey, I've been down for this long, I really need you to get this going fast. So yeah, you're kind of working under the gun. More of a reason to have kind of the guy who does this every day working on it, rather than most of our challenge is in sales anyway, is people don't even realize that there is a guy that does this kind of thing.
yeah.
Because the next thing they call is probably either their electrician or their boiler company,
Mm-hmm.
and
Or their controls guy, and that was me.
or their
They say
controls guy.
I would hit
You-
reset on it until it
6 or
start.
7 times out of 10, they'll probably kind of fumble around and
Yep.
figure it out and get it, or band-aid it enough that it works, and then at that point the customer doesn't care, it's running.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Pretty
so
common.
yeah, there's this anxiety when we show up of, all right, I know you're working on it, but come on, let's go. And
Yeah.
then the other times when we're doing a safety inspection, we need the equipment totally shut down. So they're like, okay, can we get it back now? Can we put it back online? And these things take time, and it's important to do it. So it's yeah, you got to be sort of diplomatic about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's. I mean, you remind me of the excitement when the burner guy gets there, because I had an instance at a customer where I'm working on this burner, and I'm like, I've been there 12 hours. They say I'm sitting there working on it, and it's like it's just not working, and I'm like, I don't know what else to do. And they're like, well, the burner guy's coming from Atlanta. They say, or he's coming from, you know, they say 4 hours away. And I said, well, I've been here 12 hours. I'm ready to go home, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, he gets there about 2 hours later. So I'm at 14 hours. And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, it's just this. And it takes him 15 minutes to fix it. And I'm like, how is it that you, like, you can fix it in 15 minutes? But I say, literally, I say the thing is he tore this thing all the way down to basically the like internal parts of the burner and just cleaned it.
Yeah.
That was it. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I wish I would have known this. I didn't even know this thing came apart, right?
And
So,
without having done it, when you pay a burner guy, or this is any niche industry, when you're paying that guy, you're not paying him for his time, you're paying it for the years that it took him to learn what he just did.
yeah, exactly. And it was amazing to me to watch. Is say, like, I mean, I was tired to say it was,
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning, but it was like, hey, say this is something that, I'm going to stay here and watch and learn. And obviously the next time that it happened, they say we kind of did it ourselves, but they say the burner guy was like, hey, we still need to do a safety check. So we did have to shut it down. They say, a year later, do a safety check, which is say kind of crazy. They say what we found is sometimes they say people would adjust the gas to say to be a little bit higher and it wouldn't match. And they say, obviously that became into a safety issue.
Yes.
And that they say, I like that they say, hey, you guys do offer that safety check. Is that like a standard? Like you guys always do that every year? Or is it just something that, hey, it's when the customer calls to ask for this safety check? Because I mean, we didn't really do that until, the burner guy came in and said, hey, this gas is like way
No,
too
yeah,
high.
most places are pretty unaware until we tell them so, that you're supposed to actually be getting your gas-fired systems inspected annually. And
Yeah.
most places are pretty good about doing it with their boilers, with gas-fired boilers, because there's always maintenance that needs to be done on a boiler. But you
Yep.
don't really think about process equipment in such a way, because it's a pain in the butt to have to shut it down just to have a guy work on it and pay a guy to come work on it during downtime. That's the
Yeah.
last thing you want to be doing. Current NFPA code, and this has been this way for several years now. Current NFPA 86 code says that it's got to be inspected annually, and the inspector needs to provide a written report of what he did, what passed, what failed, and then kind of course of action.
Yep.
But NFPA is not, they're not like OSHA, they're not like somebody who's got any authority. They're kind of a toothless agency where it's pretty much just a recommendation. So really who's doing the enforcing is the insurance companies, who
Yeah.
will, if a good inspector should ask, when was your most recent inspection? Can I see the report?
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. It does. So does that, like, I guess, say when when you're doing these safety inspections, to say, do you have like specific requirements for your team that you train your team to, hey, this is how we need to do this, say, inspection every time? Or and it kind of leads into my next question too, of say, how can young individuals get into, the burner industry? Obviously it's like a niche industry that, is not very common.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's got to be some type of training that you can complete, like going to HVAC training, or something like that. I mean, obviously an engineering degree is very helpful, but I mean, you had to start somewhere, right? I mean, obviously you started with a company that trained you, but is there actually any training out there? And what do you give your team for this, to make sure that you guys are always passing these safety inspections?
So to answer your first question, there really is no, I guess it answers both questions. There is no structured certification. There, you can't go to a
Okay.
class and be a certified NFPA burner safety inspector,
That's
which is a
crazy.
little bit alarming.
Hmm.
Where this is important. This is important equipment.
When you
Not
get the
only is
schools
it
on
is
board
it
for this.
it's obviously that's required. Not only is it important that it's safe, but it's also critical equipment to a plant. Without the burner, there's no heat and there's no product for whatever it is. So
Hmm.
you got to make sure that you've got a qualified guy doing it. Right now, there's, I wouldn't say a crisis in the industry, because no one really raises the flag about it. But um, the inspection is only as good as the inspector,
Yep.
and there is no guy going around making sure somebody is qualified to do that. So
Yeah.
what we have been offering, well, first of all, that's one of my goals. I'm trying to get a PE license,
Hmm.
and one of the goals for that is to stamp our safety inspections, just to kind of put a little bit on the line, put a little bit of skin in the game for it, and
Yep.
just to make sure that we don't just send a guy out to pencil whip a report and then send the bill.
Yep.
The only way to do that, the only way to grow and continue being able to offer that kind of thing, is to make sure that the guys who are doing it are properly trained. So we offer training. Yeah, we've got a little burner skid. It's just a burner on wheels, basically, with a gas train and control panel, that we will take to customer sites and train them on their own equipment, just so we can kind of teach them how to fish, and they can kind of do you know the 5 out of 10 things that I want them doing before they call me, just
Yeah.
to kind of make sure that when they call me, we've got customers all over the country. I don't want to get on a plane to go to Texas to take 15 minutes to change a pressure switch. I want you to
Yeah.
have already thought about that. The only way to do that is to kind of empower you with the knowledge about your own equipment.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially these maintenance
Exactly.
guys, they're the ones who get yelled at because something isn't working. They're the ones dealing with it. So at least having them know the basics and maybe some intermediates about where to go and what to fix, so that when they call me, we must be like, oh wow, something must be really serious. Let's get on a plane now.
Yo. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So when you're doing that, I guess, like, even for like a new person coming into the industry, what would you say, like, they would basically start, as, like, hey, say you're an HVAC tech, or you wanted to just, do engineering, like, I guess, petroleum engineering, maybe I'm not sure, I'm just asking the
It's
question
hard to
to,
say.
yeah, to get into the industry, like, so if you were looking for, people to employ, like, to train, like, as a young individual, that would be something like, you, hey, adventure into this route, right?
The industry kind of found us. All of us,
Okay.
we all came from a strange array of all different kinds of backgrounds,
Yeah.
with and without education and all that. What we have in common is just kind of loving this industry. I mean, I get to set things on fire every day.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. But we've kind of now entered the stage of growth in the business where we do have to find that new guy and say, what are we looking for when we are trying to hire somebody,
Hmm.
kind of background, and we can't really take from any of our backgrounds because we're all so different.
Yep.
So if I was going to hire somebody right now, the two things I would look for is either a mechanical engineering degree. That's what I've got.
Hmm.
or we've got one of our guys has got just general maintenance experience working at a plant,
Okay.
and it doesn't really give him the foundational knowledge of anything about burners. I don't expect him to know about burners, but I do know that he can have, he will understand our customers. He'll understand kind of the attitude of, okay, let's get this fixed now. And then it's up to us to provide the training to make that person efficient in solving problems.
Yeah.
So really the passion for the industry is kind of, you
Yeah.
can't
It's like
build that,
passion
you
for
can't
burning
change
things,
that.
right?
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You
your
just need
passion, yeah.
a maniac,
Fire,
and
say
that's cool
burning
too.
stuff. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, if you've got a police record that shows that you were in fires in the woods or whatever, come call me. But
Yeah, I
but
mean, I
generally,
hope not. I say I don't want the plants
well, yeah,
burned down, but
no
yeah.
wildfires.
Yeah.
Um, so you
Yeah.
can't train a passion for the industry. You can't train someone necessarily in attention to detail, but you can train someone. We have to make burner guys. You can't find burner guys. There's no such thing.
Yep.
So having a guy who kind of can understand the basics of air flows and gas flows and how they're related and things like that, that's kind of the important thing to us.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's really detailed and it'd probably help is say, I mean, hey, you might get somebody, that's looking for a job here after this.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna switch it over here, say to like environmental and stability concerns. Uh what strategies I guess do you guys use to lower emissions, say from the burners, or is that just kind of like, hey, say, because I mean obviously that's been big, say with manufacturing. Um is it more, is say that you leave that up to the plant because you say this is what you guys are doing, or is it just kind of like, hey, this is what we do or what? How do you guys say navigate that?
Yeah, so a lot of the industry is very concerned about carbon emissions and all that stuff right now. Um, it's still not a well understood problem. And in many cases, say you've got an oven that's rated for 10 million BTU or so. The 10 million BTU corresponds to a particular volume of natural gas that you have to burn. You have to burn this to create 10 million BTU. That just sort of is what it is. Um, and there's a number of carbon that comes with burning that much gas.
Hmm.
So as long as you're burning gas, as long as it's a gas fired system, you're creating CO2. That's just part of it.
Yep.
How to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible is we'll tune the burners, not only for emissions, we can tune them with an analyzer on most systems for the emissions of it, but then we're also tuning them for the efficiency of gas, making sure you're not wasting gas and throwing more out there or creating byproducts. CO2 is actually one of the better things you can be creating by burning gas. There's other things where you could be making aldehydes and carbon monoxide and things like that with a poorly tuned burner.
Yep.
And then in addition to that, there are customers of ours who ask us to kind of take the next step. Okay, yeah, we've accepted that the burner is the burner. It just kind of, that's what it is. However, let's recover some of the heat, and we're installing things like heat exchangers that will preheat the combustion air or return some of the heat back into the system. So some of those, depending on the system, it's not a fit for everybody, but depending on what type of system it is and the byproducts and the volumes going in and out of it, that could be a fit to reduce energy consumption and therefore CO2 emissions.
Okay. So have you gotten it like requests to say to like maybe integrate like some renewable energy sources to try to help to say do some any of that, or not really, say with the burner side of it?
That's usually done before we get to it. So that's usually
Hmm.
done on the power plant level and the generation facilities and things like that. We do have minimal involvement, somewhat depending on customer and all that, but
More like a
usually,
consultant level. Hey, this is what it is.
yeah, exactly. By the time it gets to the customer site, they already know what type of fuel they're burning.
Oh, okay. Okay. So basically, say you're just already there working. You're coming in after the fact to say to work just on the burner, basically.
Pretty
They say
much.
the renewable side, they say it's just basically consulting. Say, yeah, we can, basically, they say work hand in hand with that. They say this is where we need to focus though, or on
Sure. If
your
someone
side of the.
expresses enough interest in renewables, we can kind of handhold them through how do we get to that process.
Yep.
But actually on the generating of renewables, that's kind of beyond us. That happens way before us.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, so I guess to say the thing is what I'm leading to is what do you see the future outlook of like the burner engineering industry, and like what is the long-term vision for TEECO overall?
Long-term vision is, well, let's talk about the burner industry first.
Mm.
The Like I said, the natural gas is going to be continue to be abundant and cheap as long as it doesn't have outside forces affecting the price. Um, politically speaking and all that, we'll see what happens as far as all that. But even so, there is no more efficient way to do what we do. If we have the type of demand in the industries that we have here in this country, there's always going to be a need for energy of some variety. So part of what we're growing in is to become, to kind of diversify and broaden the types of energy that we're interested in. Some people want to explore things like infrared or electric heated systems and all that. The energy net gain loss, whatever, is debatable. But if
Okay.
if our customers are interested in it and they're exploring it and they have initiatives to do so, then we're obligated to become knowledgeable about it enough to help them understand what they're being asked to do. Because that's
Yeah.
what's happening a lot is a lot of these things, these directives get sent kind of from the top down. The corporate or the shareholders or whatever say that this company needs to become green somehow, and then
Yep.
they just go to the engineering department and tell them, okay, go ahead and do it. And they don't give them any guidance or what they're looking for or anything. And
And they
we
just
can't
got to
expect
figure it
we
out.
can't expect that engineer to be like, oh yeah, no problem, I got it.
Yep. It
So
takes some
how
time.
can we be more helpful to them?
Yep. Yeah. So, let's say, where do you see Chico going in the future? In the future here, as like growth wise, to say like for the whole overall industry, I guess. Do you see it? I mean, obviously, I'm seeing it grow already, right? It's saying, I mean, you're always going to new customers. It's saying it's growing here. Say you're local to, the upstate of South Carolina, which obviously is where I'm located as well. So, um, I think you say I'm seeing the growth big time. Is say in this realm, just from customers that I visit. I'm like, oh, you have an oven too. Oh, wow. Say there's quite a bit of this going on. I say I think a lot of the automotive industry is like, hey, I can put some sealer on this and put it through an oven instead of welding this whole part together.
Yes,
So
yes.
it just
So
it makes it easy.
the strategy for us in the future is, we're very good at burners. Like that's what 90% of the guys, that's what we know. That's what we do. So
Yep.
how do we grow? And like going back to before, creating more burner guys, got to hire people and train them correctly so they can do the things that I do today, so we can do bigger things. Really, the biggest thing for us is kind of getting the word out. Like I said, most people don't realize that there even is such a company that does this kind of thing.
Yep.
And historically, say OEMs, for example, people who are actually building ovens or even larger foundries had a combustion expert on staff. And
Yep.
what we've seen is as the industry has progressed, all of those people were the same people for about 40 years in the industry. There's a big gap that's happening where those people are all about the same age and about to probably leave the industry in the next 5 to 10 years, which is a bit of a crisis for the industry, but it's also an opportunity for us to, if we can establish ourselves today and become necessary and essential to the industry, then we can kind of be that person. We can support the OEMs and facilities of any size for the knowledge that's kind of getting lost, right?
Yo, yeah, I feel like that's pretty common across like just skilled trades in general.
Yeah.
I see it very often with especially small like engineering firms, electrical firms, HVAC firms. It's a lot of times it's a one man show now or something like that, right? So it's just like, hey, say like there's just not enough people here and we're not training, enough, or say we're not focusing on say skilled trades. It's like, oh well, they say maybe we need to do that. So I'm seeing it more, but it's like there is a gap of say 20 to 40 years
Yep.
where nobody's joined that. They say, and there's just a huge opportunity to, excel. They say once you get your name built and your company built up, they say to, hey, I'm the expert, and you'll basically be busy for the foreseeable future. They say because there's just not that many people that out there that
Exactly.
do it anymore.
And we
So
find
no,
that
that's
we find
awesome.
it as our obligation to not do what just happened and prevent the next brain drain
Yes.
and make sure that we've got the next generation of burner guys when myself or the other guys have other things that we're interested in
Yep,
or are
grooming
really
up, burner guys. They say, or burner guys or burner girls. They say little ones. They say, I mean, I grew up buying. They say for being little robot engineers. So
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I totally
Yeah, my
get it.
kids get to watch me tweak on, gas piping and weird stuff all the time, and
Yep,
they're still too young to know what exactly is going on, but at least they can show an interest in it, and I can tell them what I'm doing.
yep. And it's like, what is that? What is that? Right? I want to help. I want to help. I say, I
Yes,
get that all the time.
not very helpful,
So
but I'm
mm,
glad they're interested.
yeah, exactly. Well, I say, Mike, I appreciate you coming on to Tech Talk with Irony. Do you have any say last requests or anything that you would like to tell our guests to say, would you like to share your LinkedIn, or say email or anything like that to say that they can get a hold of you on?
Yeah, so our LinkedIn page is LinkedIn at TEECO, TEECO -SC. And like I said before, a lot of this is kind of getting the word out. Most people are either unaware that they're supposed to be getting these safety inspections, for example, or sometimes the burner is just something, it's an afterthought. No one really thinks about it because it's hopefully reliable enough, but also most of these plants, these maintenance techs and guys running these plants have got whole plants to worry about. They've got to
Yep,
worry about conveyor systems and pumps and all that kind of stuff. I can't expect them to know everything about burners.
yep,
So having a good person in your network like our guys to kind of provide that subject matter expertise to just be a resource either in hardware or service or advice or anything. We found that we have a pretty big impact on some of these customers just by being someone that they can pick up the phone and call.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, well, I say I'll include that in the show notes to say as well, um, that you can give Tico a call to say if you have any burner issues. I appreciate everybody for joining. I say this is Tech Talk with Irony Automated. I'm your host Jordan Dieterly, signing off.
Thanks, Jordan.